Thank you, Madam Chair, for bringing this bill up for markup today. The Promoting Research and Observations of Space Weather to Improve the Forecasting of Tomorrow Act, called the PROSWIFT Act, will advance America's understanding of the potential consequences of severe space weather events that have proven in the past to be far-reaching and potentially damaging. By way of background, and as has been already outlined today, space weather is a collection of physical processes beginning at the sun with solar winds and ultimately affecting human activities on Earth and in space. These solar winds and their interaction with Earth's atmosphere are not understood as well as they should be. This bill is a step towards a better understanding. At Alabama's Marshall Space Flight Center, scientists and engineers have been at the forefront of this vital research. Under the PROSWIFT Act, their research will be enhanced to advance our nation's understanding and ability to forecast space weather. Because Mr. Perlmutter and I are both passionate advocates for deep space exploration, I emphasize the relationship between space weather observation and forecasting and deep space exploration. The PROSWIFT Act makes it clear that not only can space weather impact us on the terrestrial frontier, but it can and will impact us in the final frontier of deep space exploration. In order to achieve the goals set for NASA's Artemis program, and before we launch a manned mission to Mars, we must better understand how space weather phenomena impacts life in space, satellites, and other space instrumentation. It is critical that we have the ability to properly forecast space weather and prepare for and protect astronauts from the dangers of solar radiation. I want to thank my colleague, Mr. Perlmutter, for his leadership on space weather and his partnership on the PROSWIFT Act. I encourage my colleagues to vote for this bill.
Thank you very much. Are there any others who wish to be recognized? Ms. Horn.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to thank, Representative Perlmutter and Brooks and Ranking Member Lucas for the work on this. Today's markup of H.R. 5260, the PROSWIFT Act, represents an important step for this committee in addressing a critical issue for our nation, space weather. As the chairwoman noted in her opening statement, space weather phenomena such as solar flares, solar wind, and geomagnetic storms of energized charged particles can disrupt our ground and space-based technologies as well as our infrastructure. While economic impacts of space weather are difficult to know precisely, a 2017 study estimated the cost to U.S. electricity consumers alone in the $400 million to $10 billion range for a moderate space weather event, and $1 billion to $20 billion for a more extreme event. And that's just one economic sector. That's why it is imperative that we coordinate our federal agencies' work on space weather, collaborate with academia, industry, and international partners, and invest in basic research and operational capabilities that can improve our capability to model and predict space weather phenomenon. H.R. 5260 does just that. It identifies roles and responsibilities for federal agencies involved in space weather-related activities and establishes an interagency working group led by the Office of Science and Technology Policy to coordinate those efforts. It also establishes an advisory group to benefit from the advice of academic, commercial